How horrifying when a 14-year-old skinny boy, wearing a jacket full of holes, tremblingly steps into Chicago's most luxurious casino just to check the balance on a card, and then is brutally humiliated by the city's most powerful mafia boss in front of hundreds of rich people. Southside beggar, you think you belong here? I should throw you into the lake. But only minutes later, the entire room falls dead silent when the screen displays the number $58 million. And the face of the man, once the cruelest in Chicago, suddenly turns pale, his eyes staring at the boy in horror, as if seeing a ghost from the past. Why does that mafia boss tremble? Why do his eyes shift from contempt to utter agony, as if he himself is the one about to be thrown into the freezing lake? And what happens when he discovers that the boy he just insulted is his own biological son, whom he never knew existed for the past 15 years? Stay with me, because the story about to unfold will break your heart, then make it pound again with the most intense love you've ever heard. Before we dive into this chilling and mysterious story, please remember to subscribe to the channel Alex Truths and like this video. Every subscription, like, and share from you is a huge spiritual gift and an incredibly profound source of motivation for the channel's growth, so we can continue bringing wonderful videos every day to everyone. There would be no greater joy than receiving your love and support through the comments you leave right below this video. Comments sharing your emotions, or telling us which province or city you're living and working in while listening to this story. All right, let's continue together and immerse ourselves in this amazing, captivating story that's filled with deep emotions. The bitter December wind whipped through the streets of Chicago's South Side, cutting straight through my thin coat as I hurried Tommy along the cracked sidewalks of Inglewood. It was late October of the year 2025, and the cold had already settled in like an unwelcome guest that refused to leave. My name is Emily Harper, and at 38 years old, I felt every one of those years in my bones. Thin, aching bones that hadn't known a proper meal in days. Tom, my 14-year-old son, trudged beside me, his old Chicago Bears jacket hanging loose on his frame because we'd both lost weight we couldn't afford to lose. He was all I had in this world, and I was all he had. His grandmother, my mother, Ruth Harper, had passed just weeks ago after a long battle with cancer, leaving us with nothing but grief and an envelope that arrived in our mailbox one gray morning. Inside that envelope was a plain debit card and a letter in my mother's careful handwriting. She'd been a diner waitress her whole life, working double shifts at a Greasy Spoon off 63rd Street, scraping together every penny for small monthly payments into a life insurance policy she'd kept secret even from me. "For you and Tommy," the letter said, "so you'll never have to worry like I did." The policy had grown over 20 years into something unimaginable, $58 million. I could barely comprehend it. Numbers that large didn't belong in our world of overdue rent notices, empty refrigerators, and nights huddled under threadbare blankets in our tiny apartment where the heat barely worked and the windows rattled with every gust. We'd come to the Empire that night because desperation had finally won. Our landlord had taped an eviction notice to the door that morning, and the corner store wouldn't extend credit anymore for milk or bread. Tommy needed shoes. His sneakers had holes worn clear through, and I hadn't eaten properly in so long that dizziness came in waves. The Empire was Vincent Moretti's place, a private, high-stakes club in the glittering Gold Coast district, far from our crumbling neighborhood. Vincent Moretti, everyone in Chicago knew the name. Fair-skinned, Italian-American, the powerful boss who controlled much of the city's underground world with an iron grip, wrapped in expensive suits. His club was invitation only, a playground for the wealthy and connected, with marble floors that gleamed under crystal chandeliers and air that smelled of fine cigars and money. I'd cleaned offices near there once, years ago, scrubbing floors while people like him walked over them without a glance. But tonight, Tommy clutched that debit card like a lifeline, and I clutched his hand, my voice soft and timid as we slipped past the distracted doorman during a shift change. "Just ask to check the balance," I'd whispered to him on the L train ride north. "That's all. Then we can buy groceries, real food." The lobby hit me like a different universe. Warm air enveloped us, thick with the scent of polished wood and fresh flowers. Leather chairs that looked too perfect to sit in lined the walls, and the marble floor echoed under our worn shoes. My heart pounded. Fear, anxiety, a deep disorientation that made the room spin slightly. I was malnourished, sleep-deprived from nights worrying about bills, my body thin and frail under layers of secondhand clothes. Tommy approached the VIP accounting desk, his voice barely above a whisper. I just want to check my balance." The room went quiet. Heads turned, men in tailored suits, women in designer dresses, all staring at us like we'd wandered in from another planet. And then he appeared. Vincent Moretti strode across the lobby like he owned not just the building, but the entire city. Tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp features and eyes that could freeze a person in place. His suit was midnight blue, probably worth more than everything I owned combined, and his watch glinted under the lights, a symbol of wealth so vast it made my stomach twist. He stopped in front of Tommy, looking down with a cruel smile that didn't reach his eyes. "What's this? A South Side beggar thinking he belongs here?" His voice carried, sharp and mocking, drawing laughter from the crowd. "Look at you, filthy jacket, shoes falling apart. You trying to scam my house, kid? I ought to have you thrown into the lake." The words hit like physical blows. Humiliation burned through me, hot and numbing. Tommy's face crumpled, his small frame shrinking under the weight of it all. I felt horror rise in my chest, anxiety knotting my throat, fear making my legs weak. How dare he? But who was I to challenge? I was nothing, a poor, powerless woman, desperate and destitute, standing in a world that wasn't mine. Tears stung my eyes, but I swallowed them, my voice soft and polite despite the tremor. "Please, sir, he's just a boy. He has a card. It's real." Vincent's gaze shifted to me then, and for a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Recognition? No, that couldn't be. 15 years ago, when I was just 23, working late shifts at that same diner, there had been one night, a brief encounter with a rising young man in his world. I'd never told him about the pregnancy. Better to raise Tommy alone than in danger. But now, standing there, thin and exhausted, with wind-chapped hands and hollow cheeks from too many skipped meals, I saw a shadow of confusion cross his face. The laughter grew louder. Guests muttered about street trash invading their space. My world narrowed to a pinpoint of pain, confusion, shock, deep disorientation that left me dizzy and off balance. How had we ended up here, exposed and ridiculed? Vincent waved a hand dismissively. "Run the card. Let's see what kind of joke this is." The accountant typed, and the screen lit up. $58 million. The room fell silent. Vincent's smile froze, then shattered. His face paled, eyes widening in disbelief. Inside him, a storm raged, gnawing guilt crashing against years of hardened power, consuming remorse for the cruelty he'd just unleashed on a child. And then, as records pulled up Tommy's birth details, the truth hit him like a freight train. Tommy was his son, the boy he'd never known existed. My own heart stopped, the world tilted, numbness spreading through my limbs. Shock rendered me speechless, pain twisting deep as old wounds reopened. Vincent, Vinny as his inner circle called him, stared at us, his powerful demeanor cracking. Remorse flooded him, violent and conflicting, tearing at the man who'd built an empire on fear, but now faced the fragility of a family he'd unknowingly abandoned. Outside, as we stood frozen, a group of men in dark coats lingered across the street, rival faction scouts, watching the empire. Tension hung in the air, unspoken threats in their stares. Vinny noticed them too, his protective instincts surging despite the chaos in his heart. I grabbed Tommy's hand, fear and curiosity warring inside me. Who was this man really? And what did this mean for us? Two broken souls suddenly thrust into a world of impossible wealth and danger. The night had only just begun, and the gap between our worlds felt wider and more terrifying than ever. The silence that followed the accountant's whispered announcement felt thicker than the December air outside. $58 million. The words hung in the glittering lobby of the Empire like a verdict no one had expected. My legs went numb beneath me, a wave of dizziness sweeping through my thin frame so violently that I had to grip Tommy's shoulder to keep from swaying. The marble floor seemed to tilt, the crystal chandeliers above blurring into streaks of light. I was Emily Harper, 38 years old, malnourished to the point of frailty, my coat threadbare and my hands chapped raw from nights spent scrubbing other people's floors for minimum wage. And now, in this palace of wealth that smelled of leather and expensive cologne, the screen had just declared that my mother, Ruth Harper, lifelong diner waitress, who had died in a county hospital bed with no flowers and no visitors except me, had somehow left us more money than I could fathom. Vincent Moretti stood frozen, his fair-skinned face drained of color. The cruel smile that had mocked my son only moments earlier was gone, replaced by something raw and fractured. I saw it flicker across his sharp features. Shock, then disbelief, then a gnawing remorse that seemed to claw at him from the inside. His broad shoulders, encased in that midnight blue suit worth thousands, tensed as though an invisible weight had just dropped onto them. For the first time in his life, perhaps, the man who ruled Chicago's shadows with absolute power looked small. The guests, politicians in tuxedos, women dripping diamonds, shifted uncomfortably. A few began to murmur. Across the street, through the tall windows, I caught movement. 3 men in dark coats lingering under a street lamp, watching the club with too much interest. Rival faction scouts, I realized with a chill. Word traveled fast in Vincent's world, and vulnerability was blood in the water. Tommy's small hand trembled in mine. He was only 14, thin from too many meals of instant noodles and canned soup, his cheeks still carrying the hollows of a boy who had gone to bed hungry more nights than I cared to count. I pulled him closer, my voice coming out soft and timid despite the fire in my chest. "It's okay, baby. It's really ours. Mom did this for us." Vincent's eyes, dark, intense, suddenly tormented, lifted from the screen to Tommy's face, then to mine. Recognition slammed into him like a physical blow. I saw it. The memory of one reckless night 15 years ago, when I was a 23-year-old waitress closing up the diner, and he was a rising young enforcer with dangerous charm. One night I had never spoken of again, because I would not raise my child in his world of guns and retribution. His jaw tightened, remorse flooding those eyes until they glistened. Guilt, violent and consuming, tore through the armor he had worn for decades. Before he could speak, I stepped forward, my worn boots squeaking on the polished marble, and placed myself between him and my son. My voice was quiet, polite, the way a woman who has spent her life being invisible learns to speak to those in power. "Please, Mr. Moretti, he's just a boy. He didn't mean any harm by coming here. We'll leave now." The words were barely out when Vincent's head snapped toward the entrance. The front doors had opened, letting in a gust of icy wind, and 4 men in heavy coats, faces hard, hands tucked inside pockets that clearly concealed weapons. Rivals. They had followed us, or perhaps they had been watching Vincent's club all night, waiting for any sign of weakness. The lobby tensed. Security men in suits moved subtly toward the intruders, hands hovering near concealed holsters. Vincent's voice cut through the air like a blade. Not here, not tonight. He stepped forward, placing his body between the newcomers and us without hesitation. The lead rival, a thick-necked man with a scar across his cheek, smiled coldly. Heard there was trouble in the house, Moretti. Thought we'd offer our assistance. The standoff lasted only seconds, but it felt eternal. Vincent's men formed a silent wall. Words were exchanged, low, clipped threats that carried the weight of years of bad blood. No shots were fired, but the promise of violence hung heavy. The rivals backed out slowly, melting into the night. Yet everyone knew this was only the beginning. Vulnerability had been scented. Vincent turned back to us, his face a storm of conflicting emotions. Fury at the interruption, deeper fury at himself, and something new, something fierce and protective that burned behind his eyes when he looked at me, at us. His voice, when it came, was rough, almost broken. You're not leaving, not like this. I shook my head, fear rising again, confusion making my thoughts scatter. We don't belong here, sir. We never did. My voice trembled, soft and polite, the way a destitute woman speaks when she knows she has no power. Inside, turmoil churned violently. Suspicion that this was some cruel trick, terror that the money would vanish as suddenly as it had appeared, and a dizzying, disorienting curiosity about the man whose single night had given me the greatest gift of my life, my son, and who now stood before me shattered by the truth. He took one step closer, and I instinctively pulled Tommy behind me. Vincent stopped immediately, hands raised slightly as if approaching a wounded animal. His wealth surrounded us like a taunting dream. The gleaming Rolls-Royce Phantom parked outside under valet lights, the private elevator that led to his penthouse above the club, the security team that could make problems disappear with a phone call. And here I was, thin, malnourished, my coat patched with duct tape, my hair lank from weeks without proper shampoo, my body aching from cold nights in an apartment where the radiator clanked uselessly and the windows whistled with wind. Emily, he said, my name sounding foreign and intimate on his lips. The sound of it sent a jolt through me, shock, pain, a sudden and overwhelming surge of memory. I didn't know about him, about any of this. I swear on my life, I didn't know. The remorse in his voice was raw, tearing at him visibly. His hands clenched at his sides, the knuckles white. Inside Vincent Moretti, a war raged. The ruthless boss who had crushed enemies without hesitation now confronted the greatest failure of his life. A son raised in poverty while he amassed fortunes. A woman he had used and abandoned, now standing before him frail and defiant. Guilt gnawed deeper, violent conflict twisting his heart until it felt like it might split open. I wanted to hate him. I had hated him quietly for years. But seeing the torment in his eyes, something shifted, an absurd, unfair crack in the wall I had built around my heart. Confusion flooded me, numbing and disorienting. How could the man who had just humiliated my child now look ready to fall to his knees? Outside, car engines revved. Headlights swept across the windows. More rivals circling, testing. Vincent's head of security murmured urgently in his ear. The danger was escalating because of us, because of the vulnerability we represented. Vincent's jaw set, decision hardening. You're coming with me, both of you, tonight. I shook my head again, tears finally spilling over. We have nowhere else to go, but we don't need charity from... My voice broke. Charity from the man who had fathered my son and never known it. The unfairness of it all crashed over me in a wave. The years of scraping by, the nights I'd gone hungry so Tommy could eat, the humiliation of food pantries and eviction threats, all while the father lived in unimaginable luxury. Vincent's eyes glistened now, openly. "It's not charity," he said hoarsely. It's 15 years too late. But please, let me keep you safe, just for tonight." Another car screeched to a stop outside. Shouted voices carried through the doors, rival lieutenants growing bolder. Vincent's men moved to intercept. The lobby, moments ago a place of mocking laughter, had become a powder keg. I looked down at Tommy, my brave, thin boy, clutching the debit card like it might vanish, and felt my resistance fracture. Fear, exhaustion, and a desperate, guarded curiosity won. My voice came out barely a whisper, soft and trembling. Just for tonight." Vincent exhaled as though he'd been holding his breath for 15 years. Something fierce and overwhelming flared in his eyes when they met mine. Not just remorse, but the first spark of a love that had lain dormant, now igniting with sudden, passionate intensity. It terrified me as much as it confused me. He extended his hand, not demanding, but pleading. And in that quiet, condensed moment of emotional stillness, amid the growing chaos outside, I placed my cold, trembling fingers in his warm ones. The gap between our worlds had never felt wider, or more perilously close to closing. The private elevator ride upward was silent, except for the soft hum of machinery and the faint rattle of my own breathing. Vincent had led us away from the glittering lobby, past the velvet ropes and the staring eyes, through a discreet side corridor that smelled of polished brass and fresh lilies. Tommy clung to my hand so tightly his knuckles were white. My legs felt unsteady, malnourished, sleep-deprived, carrying the weight of too many cold nights when the wind had sliced through the cracks in our apartment windows, and I'd wrapped us both in the same thin blanket, trying to convince Tommy the shivers were just excitement about tomorrow. Tomorrow never came easy. The elevator doors opened directly into Vincent's private office, high above the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the glittering Chicago skyline, the lake a dark mirror reflecting the lights of the Gold Coast. The room itself was obscene in its luxury. A massive mahogany desk, leather chairs that probably cost more than our yearly rent, a bar cart with crystal decanters catching the low light like jewels. And yet all I could smell was my own fear, sweat, desperation, the faint sourness of clothes worn too many days in a row. Vincent closed the door behind us. The sound was soft, final. He turned to the accountant who had followed us up, a quiet, middle-aged man named Paul, who looked as uncomfortable as I felt. "Run it again," Vincent ordered. His voice was low, controlled, but I heard the tremor beneath it. Every detail, source, deposits, beneficiary, everything. Paul nodded and sat at a sleek terminal. I stood frozen near the window, Tommy pressed against my side. My reflection stared back at me, hollow cheeks, dark circles under my eyes, hair limp and unwashed. I looked like a ghost haunting this palace of wealth. The contrast burned, his Rolex glinting as he paced, my cracked fingernails digging into my palms. Vincent stopped pacing and looked at me, really looked. His gaze lingered on my patched coat, the duct tape holding the sole of my left boot together, the way my shoulders hunched against the cold that still clung to me, even here in this heated sanctuary. Something in his expression fractured. Remorse clawed at him visibly, violent and unrelenting. He had built an empire on reading people, on knowing exactly how to wound or reward, yet he had never seen this. The woman he had once known briefly, now reduced to this fragile, thin figure who had carried his child alone through 15 years of grinding poverty. Paul cleared his throat. "It's confirmed, sir. The account is legitimate. Whole life insurance policy, initiated 20 years ago by Ruth Harper. Premiums paid monthly, never missed, even when she was hospitalized twice. Payout triggered upon her death 6 weeks ago. Funds transferred directly to the named beneficiaries, Emily Harper and Thomas Harper. Balance as of this morning, $58 million and 17 cents. The number struck me again, fresh and impossible. $58 million. My knees buckled. I reached for the back of a chair to steady myself, dizziness washing over me in waves. Numbness spread from my chest outward. This couldn't be real. My mother, Ruth, had worked double shifts at the diner, her hands cracked from dishwater and grease, her back bent from carrying trays. She had smiled through pain, told me everything would be okay, and all the while she had been quietly building this impossible future for us. The unfairness of it tore at me. She had never tasted the comfort her sacrifice had bought. She had died in a charity ward while this money sat untouched. Vincent made a choked sound, half groan, half curse. He turned away, bracing both hands on the desk as though he might collapse. Inside him, the conflict raged louder than ever. He was a man who had ordered men removed from his path, who had stared down rivals without flinching. Yet the sight of Tommy's thin frame and my trembling hands undid him completely. Guilt gnawed deeper, violent and consuming. He had lived in mansions, driven cars that cost more than most people's homes, while his son had worn shoes patched with cardboard. While the woman he had once held had starved herself so that child could eat. The realization was a blade twisting in his chest. He straightened slowly and faced me. Emily, I didn't know she was paying into a policy. I didn't know any of it. My voice came out small, timid, polite despite the storm inside me. She never told anyone, sir, not even me. She wanted us to remember her strong. Tears burned behind my eyes. She went without so many things, so we could have this one thing. Vincent took a step closer, then stopped when he saw me flinch instinctively. You don't have to call me sir. Not anymore. His voice cracked. Please. Outside the window, movement caught my eye. 2 black SUVs had pulled up to the curb below. Men got out, rival faction enforcers, bold enough to park directly in front of the Empire. They stood in the cold, hands in pockets, staring up at the building. Vincent noticed them too. His face hardened for a moment, the boss resurfacing, before softening again as he looked back at us. They've been watching, he said quietly. Word spreads fast when I show weakness. And tonight, I showed weakness. I swallowed. Fear rose sharp and cold. Because of us. Because I humiliated your son in front of my entire world, he corrected. Because I didn't know who he was, who you were. His hand lifted, hesitated, then dropped again. I won't let them near you, either of you. Paul cleared his throat again. Sir, the transfer can be secured tonight. I can move the funds to a trust account, set up immediate access for living expenses, housing. Vincent waved him silent. He crossed to a side table, opened a drawer, and pulled out a black credit card. He held it out to me. This is linked to an expense account. Unlimited. Use it for anything you and Tommy need. Tonight, tomorrow, forever. I stared at the card as though it might bite me. Suspicion warred with desperate hope. My fingers shook as I reached for it, then pulled back. What if it's a trick? What if you take it back? His eyes met mine, raw and pleading. I swear on my life, Emily, this is yours. It was always yours. I just didn't know. A quiet stillness settled between us, a condensed moment of emotional stillness amid the chaos. I could hear my own heartbeat, too loud. Tommy watched us both, eyes wide and uncertain. Then the moment shattered, a sharp knock at the private door. Vincent's head of security entered, face grim. "Sir, they're blocking the service entrance. 3 vehicles. They're not asking for a meeting. They're making a statement." Vincent's jaw tightened. He looked at me, then at Tommy, and something fierce and protective flared in his eyes. Love, sudden and burning, overwhelming in its intensity. It terrified him as much as it terrified me. He had spent a lifetime mastering control, yet this fragile woman and this thin boy had stripped him bare in a single night. "Get the car," he told his man. "The armored Escalade, rear exit. We're leaving, now." He turned to me. "You're coming to my house on Lakeshore Drive. It's secure. No one will touch you there. Just for tonight, until I can arrange something permanent." I opened my mouth to protest, but Tommy spoke first, voice small. "Mom, I'm cold and hungry." The words pierced me deeper than any knife. My son, my brave, hungry boy, asking for the simplest things I had failed to provide. Tears spilled over. I nodded once, unable to speak. Vincent extended his hand again. This time I took it. His palm was warm, steady, everything I was not. The contact sent a jolt through me, shock, confusion, a dizzying surge of something I refused to name. As we moved toward the private exit, Vincent paused at the window. Below, the rival enforcers had fanned out, blocking the street. He turned to his security chief. "Tell them Vincent Moretti is leaving with his family. Anyone who tries to interfere will answer to me, personally." The word family hung in the air, heavy and new. We stepped into the corridor. Behind us, the glittering city watched. Ahead lay darkness, danger, and a man whose heart was tearing itself apart with every step he took toward redemption. And somewhere deep inside me, beneath the fear and suspicion, a tiny, trembling spark answered his. The armored Escalade cut through the snowy streets of Chicago like a black shark through dark water. I sat in the back seat, Tommy pressed against my side, his head resting on my shoulder because exhaustion had finally won over fear. My own body felt weightless and heavy at the same time, malnourished, thin, every rib visible beneath my worn sweater if anyone cared to look. The heated leather seats warmed me for the first time in weeks, but the warmth only made the cold I had carried inside for years feel sharper by contrast. Vincent sat up front beside the driver, his broad back rigid, one hand resting on the dashboard as though ready to steady himself against whatever came next. Streetlights flashed across his face in rhythmic pulses. Each time the light touched him, I saw the same storm, jaw clenched, eyes haunted, fair-skinned features drawn tight with torment. The man who could silence a room with a glance was coming undone in silence. Gnawing remorse had taken root deep in his chest and was spreading like frost across glass, violent, unstoppable. He kept glancing back at Tommy in the rearview mirror, and each time his gaze lingered longer, the conflict in his heart grew more savage. Guilt for a life of luxury built on shadows, while his own blood had shivered in an unheated apartment. Remorse for every cruel word he had flung at a boy who carried his eyes, his mouth, his blood. We turned onto Lakeshore Drive, the lake a black void on our left, the city's golden towers rising on our right. Vincent's home loomed ahead, a sleek, modern tower of glass and steel, private elevator, doormen in crisp uniforms who nodded respectfully as the Escalade pulled into the underground garage. The disparity struck me like a slap. While I had counted quarters for bus fare, he had lived here, surrounded by security and silence and space. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse. Warm light spilled over Italian marble, over furniture that looked untouched by human wear, over floor-to-ceiling windows framing the glittering skyline. A fireplace crackled softly in the living room, real wood, not the electric heater that coughed and sputtered in our old place. The air smelled faintly of cedar and something clean and expensive. Tommy's eyes went wide. He had never seen anything like it. I felt dizziness rise again, shock, disorientation, the sense that the floor might tilt and drop us back into the cold. Vincent shrugged out of his overcoat and handed it to a discreet staff member who appeared and vanished without a word. Then he turned to us, hands open, voice low and rough. "You're safe here. No one gets up without my say-so." I nodded, my voice soft and timid. "Thank you, Mr. Moretti." The politeness came automatically, the habit of a woman who had spent her life apologizing for taking up space. He flinched at the formal name. "Vincent, please." He led us to a guest suite, 2 bedrooms connected by a sitting area, beds turned down with linens softer than anything I had ever touched. A tray waited on a low table, sandwiches thick with roast beef and cheese, fresh fruit, hot chocolate steaming in porcelain mugs. Real food. Tom hesitated, looking at me for permission. I nodded, tears pricking again. He sat and began to eat slowly at first, then faster, as though afraid it might disappear. Vincent watched from the doorway, arms folded tight across his chest, as if holding himself together. When Tommy paused to breathe, Vincent spoke, voice barely above a whisper. Paul pulled the full file while we drove. Birth certificate, hospital records, everything. I froze, sandwich halfway to my mouth. The room narrowed to a pinpoint. I knew what was coming. He stepped inside, closed the door softly, and knelt in front of Tommy. No small thing for a man his size, a man accustomed to towering over everyone. "Kid, Tommy, the records list me as your father." Tommy's eyes went round. He looked at me, confusion and hope warring on his thin face. "Mom?" I could not speak. Numbness spread from my heart outward, pain sharp and sudden. 15 years of silence, of choosing safety over truth, of nights I had lain awake wondering if I had done the right thing. All of it crashed over me now. My voice, when it came, was small, trembling. "It's true, baby. I never told him. I thought it was better that way." Vincent's head bowed. A shudder ran through his powerful frame. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. "I didn't know," he said again, the words ragged. "If I had known, God, Emily, if I had known." His voice broke completely. He reached out as though to touch Tommy's shoulder, then pulled back, hands clenching into fists. Inside him, the conflict was savage. The ruthless boss who had never begged for anything, now on his knees before a boy he had helped create and then abandoned without a thought. Remorse tore at him like teeth. Love, sudden, fierce, burning, flooded in behind it, overwhelming in its intensity. He loved this boy with a violence that frightened even him. Tommy stared, sandwich forgotten. "You're my dad?" Vincent could only nod. The silence that followed was dense, almost suffocating. Then Tommy did something that broke us both. He slid off the chair and wrapped his thin arms around Vincent's neck. Vincent froze for a heartbeat, then enveloped the boy in a careful embrace, as though afraid he might bruise him. His broad shoulders shook. I watched, tears streaming silently down my face, my own heart tearing in opposite directions. Relief that Tommy finally had what I could never give him, terror at what this world might demand in return. Vincent pulled back gently, cupping Tommy's face. "I'm so sorry, son. For every night you were cold, for every meal you missed, I'm sorry." Tommy whispered, "It's okay." But it wasn't. Not yet. Vincent stood slowly, turning to me. The love in his eyes when they met mine was no longer hidden. It blazed, passionate and consuming, born in a single night but rooted in a memory neither of us had ever truly forgotten. Suspicions still lingered in me, guarded and fearful, yet something answered deep inside, a spark, terrifying and warm. His phone buzzed harshly. He glanced at the screen and his face hardened. They're outside the building. 2 cars. They followed us. He moved to the window, parting the sheer curtain. Far below, headlights idled at the curb. Men leaned against the vehicles, watching the entrance. Rivals, bold, reckless, sensing blood. Vincent turned back, decision made. You stay here, lock the door behind me. Fear surged, sharp and cold. Vincent! He crossed the room in 2 strides, stopping just short of touching me. I will not let them near you, either of you. His voice was steel wrapped in velvet. You are mine to protect now. The words hung between us, possessive, tender, overwhelming. My breath caught. Confusion, dizziness, a sudden and violent surge of feeling I could not name. He left the suite, the door closing with quiet finality. Through the window, I watched him stride across the lobby far below, flanked by 4 men. The rivals straightened as he approached. Words were exchanged, sharp, low, threatening. No hands raised, no weapons drawn, but the tension crackled even from 30 stories up. Vincent stood tallest, voice carrying authority that made the others step back. One by one, the cars pulled away. He had sent them running with nothing but his presence and his name. When he returned 20 minutes later, snowflakes melting in his dark hair, his eyes sought mine immediately. Relief, fierce protectiveness, and that burning love, all of it laid bare. Tommy had fallen asleep on the couch, plate empty, face peaceful for the first time in months. Vincent lifted him gently, carried him to one of the beds, tucked him in with a tenderness that brought fresh tears to my eyes. Then he came to me, standing close but not touching. Stay, he said quietly. Let me take care of you, both of you, please. I looked around at the warmth, the safety, the food, the soft bed waiting, and felt the unfairness of my life crash over me again. Years of cold nights, of choosing between medicine and rent, of watching my son grow thin while his father lived in this untouched splendor. Yet here he was, broken open by the truth, offering everything he had. My voice was barely a whisper. Just for tonight. But even as I said it, I felt the spark inside me flare brighter, curious, terrified, alive. And in Vincent's eyes, the love burned hotter, a fire that promised to consume us both. Morning light filtered through the heavy drapes of the guest suite, soft and golden, the kind of light that had never reached our cramped apartment on the south side. I woke on the edge of the enormous bed, still in my patched coat because I had been too exhausted and too afraid to take it off. Tom slept deeply beside me, his thin face relaxed in a way I had not seen in months, one arm flung over the plush pillow as though claiming it for his own. For a moment, I simply watched him breathe, my heart aching with a mixture of relief and fresh terror. Relief that he was warm, safe, fed. Terror that this fragile dream might shatter the instant I fully believed in it. I slipped from the bed, my worn boots silent on the thick carpet. My body protested, muscles stiff from cold nights spent curled tight to preserve heat, joints aching from years of carrying laundry baskets up 5 flights when the elevator broke again. I was 38, but felt 60. Malnourished, sleep-deprived, the hollows beneath my eyes permanent now. In the bathroom mirror, I caught my reflection and looked away quickly. The woman staring back was a stranger, thin cheeks, cracked lips, hair dull and tangled. I splashed water on my face from a faucet that ran hot instantly, a luxury so small yet so unimaginable that tears welled again. Vincent was already in the sitting area when I emerged. He sat on the edge of a leather armchair, elbows on knees, head in his hands. He had not slept. His expensive shirt was wrinkled, tie discarded, the top buttons undone. The powerful frame that had faced down rivals on the street last night now looked diminished, bowed under a weight no one else could see. When he heard my soft footsteps, he straightened quickly, as though caught in weakness. "Emily." His voice was hoarse, raw from hours of silent torment. "Did you sleep?" I nodded, though it was only half true. "A little. Thank you for everything." The words came out timid, polite, the way a destitute woman speaks when she knows she is receiving charity she has no right to expect. He stood, towering over me, yet careful not to crowd. "You don't have to thank me. You never have to thank me." Remorse cracked his voice wide open. He took one step closer, then stopped, hands clenching at his sides. Inside him, the conflict raged fiercer than ever. The man who had built an empire through calculated ruthlessness now confronted the living proof of his greatest failure. 15 years of a son's life lost to cold and hunger while he had slept in sheets like these. The knowledge was a living wound, gnawing without mercy. "I had the staff prepare breakfast," he said, gesturing toward a rolling cart I had not noticed. Silver domes over plates, fresh coffee steaming, orange juice in crystal glasses, baskets of pastries still warm. The sight blurred through my tears. Tommy and I had lived on oatmeal thinned with water and day-old bread from the reduced rack. The unfairness of it, of my mother dying without ever tasting this comfort, of Tommy growing up thin while his father wanted for nothing, rose like bile in my throat. Vincent saw the tears and misinterpreted them, pain flashing across his face. "If it's too much, if you want something else." "No," I whispered. It's perfect." My voice broke. I turned away, ashamed of my weakness, ashamed of the hunger that clawed at me even now. He moved then, slowly, giving me time to step back if I wished. When I did not, he placed one large hand gently on my shoulder. The warmth of his palm through my thin coat sent a jolt through me. Shock, confusion, a sudden dizzying warmth I had no name for. "Emily," he said quietly, "I need to say this while I still can. I am sorry. For the night we met, for walking away, for never knowing, for every day you struggled alone. I am so sorry." The apology was raw, stripped of pride. His hand trembled slightly against my shoulder. Love, passionate, overwhelming, burning from the ashes of guilt, poured from his eyes when they met mine. It terrified me, this sudden intensity from a man whose world was danger and power. Yet something deep inside me, long buried under layers of survival, answered with a trembling spark. I pulled away gently, guarded, fearful. "You couldn't have known," I said softly. "I made the choice not to tell you." And I made the choice to be the kind of man a woman would hide a child from. The self-loathing in his voice was brutal. He turned to the window, staring out at the lake. "I thought power was everything, control, fear, money. But last night, seeing Tommy's shoes held together with tape, knowing he went hungry while He stopped, throat working. I've never felt so powerless in my life. A soft knock interrupted. Vincent's security chief entered, face grim. "Sir, they hit the Englewood apartment an hour ago, tore the place apart, left a message, payback for showing weakness." Vincent's entire body went rigid. Fury flashed, then something colder, more deadly. But beneath it, fear, for us. "They touched our things?" The man nodded. "Nothing of value, but they made sure we'd know they were there." Vincent glanced at me, eyes darkening with fresh torment. "Your home." "It was never really a home," I said quietly, the words tasting like ash. "Just a place we survived." Yet the violation stung. The few photographs of my mother, Tommy's school drawings taped to the wall, the worn blanket we had shared on the coldest nights, all likely destroyed now because of association with him. Vincent's jaw clenched. "You're never going back there, either of you." He moved with sudden decision, pulling out his phone. "Paul, set up the trust today, full amount, immediate access to living expenses. Find a secure property, North side, top floor, full staff. And get a team to whatever's left of the apartment. Salvage anything they can." He ended the call and turned to me. "You'll have a new place by tonight. Safe, comfortable, everything you need." I shook my head, dizziness returning. "Vincent, we can't. I can't accept." "You're not accepting charity," he said fiercely. "You're accepting what should have been yours all along. What I owe you. What I owe him." His voice cracked on the last word. Tommy appeared in the doorway then, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Mom, is everything okay?" Vincent knelt instantly, bringing himself to Tommy's level. "Everything's going to be okay, son. I promise you that." Tommy looked at him, really looked, and something softened in his thin face. He nodded slowly. Vincent stood, decision burning in his eyes. "We're leaving in 10 minutes. I'll take you myself to see what's left. You should have whatever can be saved." Fear surged in me. Is it safe? I'll make it safe. The drive south was tense. Vincent's armored convoy, 3 black SUVs, cut through morning traffic. He sat beside me in the back this time, close enough that I could feel the heat of him, the faint scent of his cologne mingling with the leather seats. Tom dozed against my side again. Vincent watched him constantly, torment etched deeper with every mile. When we reached Englewood, the street was cordoned off by 2 unmarked cars, rival lookouts. Vincent's driver slowed. The lookouts straightened, hands visible but threatening. Vincent rolled down his window just enough to be heard. "Tell your boss Vincent Moretti is here on personal business. Anyone interferes, they answer to me." The men exchanged glances, then backed off slowly, cars pulling away. No words, no gestures, just the weight of his name clearing the path. Our building looked worse in daylight, peeling paint, broken windows patched with cardboard, trash overflowing. Police tape fluttered across our door. Neighbors must have called after the break-in. Vincent's men cleared it. Inside, the apartment was devastation. Furniture overturned, drawers emptied, walls slashed. My mother's few photographs lay torn on the floor. Tommy's drawings shredded. I sank to my knees amid the ruin, numbness spreading until I could barely feel the cold linoleum beneath me. Vincent knelt beside me, gathering the torn photos with careful fingers. When he found one intact, my mother smiling tiredly in her diner uniform, he pressed it gently into my hand. "I'm sorry," he whispered again, voice breaking completely. In that moment, on my knees in the wreckage of the only life I had known, surrounded by the man whose world had both destroyed and saved it, something inside me fractured wide open. Suspicion remained, fear remained, but beneath them a new feeling stirred, fragile, confusing, but warm. Vincent helped me stand, his arms steady around my waist. Outside, his men loaded the few salvageable items into the SUVs. Tommy's winter coat, a small box of my mother's keepsakes, the blanket we had shared. As we drove north again, the city blurring past, Vincent's hand found mine on the seat between us. He did not grip, only rested his palm over my cold fingers. I did not pull away. The spark between us burned brighter, threatening to become a flame neither of us could control. And in Vincent's tormented heart, love and remorse waged their fiercest battle yet, for the woman he had lost once and the family he would die to protect now. The new apartment Vincent arranged for us was ready by late afternoon, a secure, furnished penthouse in a gleaming tower just off Michigan Avenue, far from the broken windows and howling wind of Englewood. Staff had already stocked the refrigerator with fresh groceries, laid soft towels in the bathrooms, and placed new clothes in the closets, warm coats, sturdy shoes for Tommy, even simple dresses and sweaters in my size. Everything was quiet, clean, impossibly luxurious. Yet when the elevator doors opened directly into the foyer, I stood frozen on the threshold, Tommy's hand cold in mine. The marble floor stretched too wide, the chandelier too bright. Dizziness washed over me again, shock, confusion, a deep disorientation that made the walls seem to pulse. This was not our world. We did not belong in places where heat flowed without rattling pipes and light switches worked without flickering. Vincent watched from the doorway, his powerful frame filling the space, yet careful not to crowd us. Snow still dusted the shoulders of his dark overcoat. He had driven us here himself after leaving the ruined apartment. His eyes, dark, tormented, followed every small movement I made. The remorse that had cracked him open that morning had only deepened, carving new lines around his mouth. Inside him, the war raged without pause. The man who commanded fear in Chicago's shadows now feared only one thing: losing us again. I stepped inside at last, my worn boots leaving faint, wet prints on the pristine floor. Shame burned in my chest. "Vincent, this is too much. We can't." "You can," he said quietly, voice rough with emotion. "You will. It's yours now. Paid for. Safe." He handed me a key card, his fingers brushing mine for the briefest moment. The contact sent warmth racing up my arm, confusing and frightening. I pulled my hand away, guarded, suspicious still. Tommy wandered forward, touching the back of a plush sofa as though expecting it to vanish. "Mom, it's like a hotel." Vincent's face softened at the wonder in his son's voice, but pain flashed immediately after. He turned away quickly, hiding it. That evening settled into an uneasy calm. Staff prepared dinner: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans glistening with butter, food so abundant and fragrant that my stomach cramped with hunger I had ignored for weeks. Tommy ate 2 full plates, eyes wide with disbelief. I picked at mine, tears threatening again at the simple kindness of a hot meal without worry. Vincent sat across from us, but ate almost nothing, watching us instead with that burning intensity that made my skin prickle. After Tommy fell asleep in his new bedroom, door open a crack so he could hear my voice if he woke frightened, Vincent led me to the living room. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city lights, a carpet of gold and red stretching to the horizon. He poured 2 glasses of water, no alcohol, as though sensing my fragility, and handed me one. We stood in silence for a long moment, the kind of condensed emotional stillness that felt heavier than words. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his expression darkened. They found the new address. My heart lurched. How? Someone talked, or they followed the moving team. He moved to the window, parting the sheer curtain. Far below, a dark sedan idled across the street, 2 men inside watching the entrance. Another car circled the block slowly. Rivals, emboldened by rumors of Vincent's sudden vulnerability, testing how far they could push. Fear rose sharp and cold in my throat. "Tommy, he's safe," Vincent said immediately. "The building is locked down. My men are in the lobby, the garage, the roof. But," he turned to me, torment raw in his eyes, "I can't leave you here alone tonight, not until I handle this." I wrapped my arms around myself, thin shoulders trembling beneath the new sweater someone had laid out for me. "We'll be fine. You don't have to." "I do," he cut in, voice low and fierce. "I need to." The words carried layers. Need to protect, need to atone, need to stay close to the woman and child who had shattered his carefully controlled world. He made calls, short, clipped orders that sent teams into motion. Then he dismissed the staff for the night, locked every door himself, checked every window. When he returned to the living room, he looked exhausted, the weight of his empire and his guilt pressing down equally. "You should sleep," he said softly. "Take the master bedroom. I'll stay out here." I shook my head, voice timid. "I can't take your bed." "It's yours now," he repeated. "Everything here is yours." The unfairness of it, of my life of cold nights and empty cupboards, suddenly replaced by this warmth because of a man who had once walked away, twisted inside me like a blade. Tears spilled over before I could stop them. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered. "You don't owe us anything." He crossed the room in 2 strides, stopping just short of touching me. "I owe you 15 years, he said, voice breaking. "I owe you every night you were cold, every meal you skipped, every tear you cried alone. I owe you a lifetime." His hands hovered near my arms, wanting to comfort but afraid to presume. Love blazed in his eyes, passionate, consuming, terrifying in its sudden depth. It had ignited the moment he learned the truth, and now burned hotter with every passing hour. I backed away a step, dizziness returning. "I don't know how to do this," I admitted, voice small. "I don't know how to be here with you." His face crumpled. "I don't either," he confessed. "But I know I can't leave you unprotected. Not tonight." Another buzz from his phone. He answered, listened, face hardening. "They're in the lobby, demanding to speak to me." He moved toward the door. I caught his sleeve without thinking, thin fingers clutching expensive wool. "Don't go down there." "I have to," he said gently, covering my hand with his. "If I don't face them, they'll keep coming. I won't risk you or Tommy." He left, the elevator swallowing him. I stood at the window, heart pounding, watching the confrontation unfold far below. Vincent emerged into the lobby flanked by his men. 5 rivals waited, confident, aggressive. Words were exchanged, voices rising but controlled. Vincent stood tallest, shoulders squared, authority radiating even from 30 floors up. One rival stepped too close, gesturing sharply. Vincent's men moved forward. The rivals backed down slowly, retreating to their cars, but not before casting long looks upward, toward our lighted windows. Vincent returned 20 minutes later, snow in his hair again, breathing hard. He locked the door behind him and leaned against it for a moment, eyes closed. When he opened them and saw me waiting, something in him broke further. "They'll be back," he said quietly. "Tomorrow, the next day, until they understand you're untouchable." I wrapped my arms around myself again. "Because of who you are. Because of who you are to me." The confession hung between us, raw and overwhelming. He crossed the room slowly, stopping an arm's length away. "I can sleep on the couch, or in Tommy's sitting area, wherever you're comfortable." The penthouse suddenly felt too large and too small at once. Danger circled outside. Safety, and this man, waited inside. My choices had always been survival or deeper poverty. Now the choice was trust or continued fear. I looked at him, at the torment in his eyes, the love that had surged so fiercely it seemed to consume him, and felt my guarded walls tremble. "Stay close," I whispered, hardly believing the words left my lips. "Just in case." Vincent exhaled as though he had been holding his breath for years. He nodded once, eyes shining. We settled in the living room, he on one sofa, me on the other, a soft blanket draped over my shoulders by his careful hands. The city lights glittered beyond the glass, beautiful and distant. Between us stretched a quiet, condensed stillness, heavy with everything unsaid. Outside, engines revved occasionally, rivals circling, testing. Inside, 2 broken souls guarded each other through the long night, hearts tearing wider with every shared breath. And in the darkness, Vincent's love burned brighter, fierce and protective, while my own fear began, slowly, tremblingly, to make room for something new. The next morning broke gray and heavy, snow falling thick outside the tall windows of the penthouse. I woke on the sofa, blanket tucked carefully around me, the faint scent of Vincent's cologne lingering on the fabric. He was already up, standing at the kitchen island in a dark sweater and trousers, speaking quietly into his phone. When he saw me stir, he ended the call at once and crossed the room, movements careful, as though approaching something fragile that might shatter. "Good morning," he said softly. "Coffee's fresh. Eggs, bacon, whatever you want." My stomach twisted with hunger I still felt ashamed to admit. I nodded, voice timid. "Thank you, Vincent." Tommy emerged moments later, hair tousled, eyes brighter than I had seen in years. The new clothes fit him perfectly, jeans without patches, a warm hoodie, sneakers that did not let in snow. He looked like a different boy. Vincent watched him with that same raw hunger, drinking in every detail as though memorizing a miracle. Breakfast passed in near silence, the clink of silverware loud against the quiet. Vincent ate little again, eyes flicking constantly to the windows where snow blurred the city. When his phone buzzed once more, his face tightened. "They hit one of my warehouses last night," he said quietly. "Burned 2 trucks, left a calling card." I set my fork down, fear rising cold. Because of us. He met my gaze, remorse and fury warring in his eyes. "Because they think I'm distracted. Because I am distracted." His voice dropped. "By you, by Tommy, by everything I should have protected years ago." Tommy looked between us, sensing the tension. "Are we still in danger?" Vincent's jaw clenched. "Not if I can help it." He stood abruptly. "There's something I need to do today. I'd like you both to come with me, if you're willing. Back to Englewood. One of my men found a box the intruders missed. Under the floorboards in your old bedroom. Your mother's things, maybe." My breath caught. My mother's things, hidden even from me. The thought of returning to that ruined apartment filled me with dread, yet curiosity burned brighter. I nodded slowly. "Yes, please." The drive south felt longer than before. Vincent's convoy moved cautiously, eyes scanning every intersection. Halfway there, a dark SUV pulled out behind us aggressively, tailing too close. Vincent's driver accelerated smoothly. The pursuing vehicle kept pace. At a red light in a quiet industrial stretch, the SUV nosed alongside. Windows rolled down. The rival driver, a thick-necked man with tattoos crawling up his neck, leaned out, shouting threats across the lane. Vincent's window lowered just enough for his voice to carry, cold and commanding. "Back off. This is family business." The man laughed mockingly, revving his engine. Vincent's security vehicle pulled forward, blocking. Words flew, sharp, venomous promises of retaliation. No weapons shown, but the threat hung heavy. The light changed. Vincent's driver surged ahead. The rivals fell back, but not before the tattooed man pointed 2 fingers at his own eyes, then at our car. "I'm watching you." Vincent's knuckles were white on the armrest. Inside him, torment boiled. Rage at the insult, deeper rage at himself for dragging us into this storm. Love, fierce, protective, consuming, flared hotter, directed at the thin woman beside him and the boy in the back seat. We reached the old building under heavy guard. Vincent's men had secured the block. Neighbors watched warily from windows. The apartment door hung crooked, police tape torn. Inside, the destruction looked even crueler in daylight. Cushions gutted, walls gouged, the tiny kitchen cabinets emptied onto the floor. My knees weakened. I had scrubbed these floors on my hands and knees after 12-hour cleaning shifts, had patched these walls with whatever I could find, had rocked Tommy to sleep in this very room while wind howled through cracks I could not afford to fix. Vincent's security man handed him a small metal box, pried from beneath loose floorboards in my old bedroom. Vincent knelt, brushing dust from the lid, and passed it to me with reverent care. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside, my mother's diner name tag, worn smooth. A thin stack of photographs, me as a baby, Tommy as a newborn. A small notebook filled with her neat handwriting. Lists of premium payments, dates, amounts, painstakingly recorded. And at the bottom, a single envelope addressed to me in her careful script. For Emily, when the time is right. Tears blurred everything. I sank to the cold floor amid the wreckage, clutching the envelope. Vincent knelt beside me at once, broad frame shielding me from the ruin. Tom hovered nearby, eyes wide. I opened the letter with numb fingers. My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, the policy paid out and you're safe. That's all I ever wanted. I'm sorry I kept it secret. I didn't want you worrying or counting on something that might never come. You were always so strong, carrying everything alone. I wish I could have given you more while I was here. Warm coats, good food, a home without leaks. But know I was proud every single day. Take care of Tommy. Let him dream big. And let yourself dream too. You deserve happiness, my girl, more than you know. All my love forever, Mom. The words tore me open. Sobs rose, violent and unstoppable. 15 years of exhaustion, of skipped meals so Tommy could have seconds, of nights I lay awake calculating how to stretch $20 until payday. All of it poured out on that dirty floor. My thin body shook with the force of it. Vincent's arms went around me carefully, as though I might break. He held me while I cried, his own breath ragged against my hair. When I quieted at last, he did not let go. I should have been here, he whispered, voice fractured. I should have carried this with you. I pulled back slightly, face wet, guarded walls trembling. You couldn't have known. I could have been the kind of man you would have told. Self-loathing twisted his features. Instead, I was the kind you hid a child from. Tommy knelt beside us, placing one small hand on Vincent's arm. The simple touch undid him completely. Vincent pulled the boy into our embrace, holding us both as though we were the only solid things left in his world. Outside, engines growled. Vincent's men radioed urgently, rivals circling again, closer this time, 3 vehicles blocking the street. Vincent stood swiftly, shielding us with his body. He guided us toward the door, voice calm but steel beneath. Time to go. In the hallway, neighbors watched silently, people who had shared thin walls with us for years, who had slipped extra food onto our doorstep when they could. One elderly woman pressed a small paper bag into my hand, homemade cookies for Tommy. Her eyes met Vincent's, wary but grateful. He nodded once, respect in the gesture. The rivals waited downstairs, lined across the street. Vincent emerged first, flanked by his men. The lead rival, a tall man in a leather jacket, stepped forward, voice carrying. You're going soft, Moretti. Bringing your new family to the old neighborhood? Bad message. Vincent's response was quiet, deadly. This is my family. Touch them and you'll learn what soft really means. The standoff stretched, snow falling between them. No one moved aggressively, but the threat pulsed. Finally, the rivals backed away, cars peeling off slowly. Vincent turned to me, eyes blazing with that fierce love. Never again, he vowed. You'll never come back to a place like this unless you choose to. We drove north in silence, the metal box on my lap, my mother's letter folded carefully inside my coat. Tommy dozed against my side. Vincent's hand rested on the seat between us, palm up, an unspoken invitation. After a long moment, I placed my cold fingers in his. The touch was electric, confusing, overwhelming. His grip tightened gently, warmth spreading through me like sunlight after endless winter. And in the quiet of the car, amid falling snow and circling danger, 2 hearts, torn by years of absence and sudden proximity, began to beat in dangerous, hopeful rhythm. The days that followed blurred into a strange rhythm of guarded safety and growing closeness. Vincent rarely left the penthouse, conducting business by phone and encrypted video, his men handling the streets. Tommy adjusted quickly, new school arranged privately, tutors arriving daily, meals that filled out his thin cheeks a little more each day. I watched him blossom and felt my own heart tear in new ways. Gratitude so deep it hurt. suspicion that it could not last, and a dizzying confusion whenever Vincent's eyes lingered on me with that burning intensity. We moved carefully around each other. Mornings found him making coffee, strong, rich brew poured into porcelain cups, while I still expected the instant packets thinned with tap water. Evenings he read to Tommy from books delivered in stacks, his deep voice steady and patient. And late at night, when the city quieted, we sat together on the wide sofa, sometimes speaking, sometimes simply sharing the silence. His hand would rest near mine, not quite touching until I allowed it. Each time our fingers brushed, warmth spread through my cold, numbed heart, frightening and irresistible. Yet danger circled closer. Vincent's phone never stopped. Reports of rival crews testing boundaries, warehouses tagged, drivers intimidated. He shielded us from most details, but I saw the strain etching deeper lines around his eyes. Remorse and love warred inside him constantly. Remorse for the life he had built that now endangered us. Love that grew fiercer with every shared glance, every small smile I gave him. One crisp afternoon in late October of the year 2025, Vincent received a call that drained the color from his face. He stepped onto the balcony to take it, snow flurries swirling around him. When he returned, his expression was stone. "We're leaving the city for a few days," he said quietly. "A property I own in Wisconsin, quiet, secure, just until I settle this." I nodded, fear rising again. "Is it bad?" He hesitated, then admitted, "Someone close is talking, giving them routes, schedules. I need to find out who." Tommy was at tutoring in another room. Vincent crossed to me, voice low. "I won't risk you, either of you." His hand cupped my cheek gently, the first time he had touched my face. The warmth of his palm against my cool skin sent a jolt through me, shock and longing intertwined. I did not pull away. His eyes searched mine, love blazing openly now, passionate and consuming. "Emily, I need you to know, if anything happens to me—" "Nothing will," I whispered, voice trembling. He smiled faintly, pained. "Promise me you'll take Tommy and disappear with the trust money. Live safe, happy." Tears filled my eyes. "Stop." He leaned his forehead against mine, breath mingling. "I've never been this terrified in my life. Not of them, of losing you before I've even had you." The moment stretched, condensed, and electric. Then his phone buzzed again, urgent. He kissed my forehead once, brief and reverent, before pulling away. The convoy left at dusk. 3 armored SUVs, Vincent driving the middle one with us inside. Snow fell heavier now, blanketing the city. Halfway to the expressway, traffic slowed. Vincent tensed, scanning mirrors. A dark van pulled alongside at a light, window rolling down. The driver, Vincent's own lieutenant, Marco, a man who had been at his side for 20 years, leaned out. "Boss," Marco called, voice too casual. "Pull over, we need to talk." Vincent's face went deadly still. He knew. Betrayal from within, the worst kind. Marco's eyes flicked to the rear view, calculating. Behind us, another vehicle boxed us in. Rivals, coordinated by the man Vincent had trusted like family. Vincent's voice was ice. "You sold us out." Marco shrugged, false regret in his smile. "Times change. You're going soft, Vin. Family man now. Bad for business." Vincent's hand moved slowly to the console, pressing a silent alarm. "You know what happens to traitors." Marco laughed. "Not if they hit first." The light changed. Chaos erupted, not with weapons, but with vehicles. The van surged forward, ramming our bumper. Our driver swerved, tires screeching on snow. The boxing car sideswiped us. Vincent grabbed the wheel from the passenger seat, steering hard to avoid a spin. Tommy cried out from the back. I pulled him down, shielding him with my thin body. Vincent's men in the lead and trailing SUVs reacted instantly, blocking, maneuvering. Horns blared, metal scraped. Vincent floored it through a red light, weaving between cars. The rivals pursued, reckless in traffic. At a narrow intersection, Marco's van clipped our rear again, hard. The world tilted violently. Our SUV skidded, slammed a guardrail, and rolled once before coming to rest on its side in a snowbank. Pain exploded through me, shoulder, ribs, head. Dizziness overwhelmed, numbness spreading. Tommy's cries cut through the haze. Vincent, blood on his forehead, suit torn, kicked his door open and hauled us out into the freezing night. Snow stung my face. Sirens wailed in the distance. Vincent's silent alarm had worked. But the rivals circled back. Marco stepped from his van, flanked by 4 men, advancing slowly through the falling snow. Vincent stood in front of us, blood dripping, body shielding ours completely. His men rushed from their vehicles, forming a wall. Marco raised his voice over the wind. "Walk away, Vin. Give us the woman and kid as message. We let you live." Vincent's response was a roar of pure fury. "Over my dead body." The standoff stretched, snow swirling between them. Vincent's men held the line. Marco hesitated, perhaps realizing the betrayal had gone too far, perhaps sensing arriving police lights. Finally, he backed toward his van, spitting curses. The rivals fled as sirens grew louder. Vincent turned to us, face ashen beneath the blood. He knelt in the snow, pulling Tommy into his arms first, checking for injuries with shaking hands. Then he reached for me. "Emily." Pain shot through my side as I tried to stand. Vision blurred. He caught me as I sagged, lifting me gently despite his own wounds. "I've got you," he whispered fiercely. "Always." At the hospital, doctors worked quickly. Tommy bruised but unbroken, me with cracked ribs and concussion, Vincent needing stitches and refusing pain medication until he knew we were safe. He sat between our beds, holding one of our hands in each of his, refusing to leave. Later, when Tommy slept, Vincent leaned close to my bed, voice raw. "Marco's finished, but I should have seen it coming. I brought this on you." I turned my hand palm up beneath his. "You saved us." His eyes filled. I almost didn't. The remorse was unbearable now, tearing him apart. Love poured out unchecked, passionate, desperate, willing to burn the world to keep us safe. I squeezed his fingers weakly. "You did." In the dim hospital light, amid beeping monitors and falling snow beyond the window, Vincent pressed his lips to my knuckles, reverent, trembling. The kiss lingered, warm and promising. Outside, his remaining loyal men stood guard. Inside, betrayal's bitter cost hung heavy. But something new strengthened between us. Trust forged in wreckage, love that had survived its first true test. And in Vincent's tormented heart, the decision crystallized. He would end the threats forever, whatever the price, because the woman and boy beside him were worth more than any empire he had ever built. The hospital room was quiet, except for the steady beep of monitors and the muffled howl of wind against the windows. Snow had turned to sleet, lashing the glass in angry bursts. Tommy slept in the next bed, sedated lightly for pain, his small face peaceful under the soft glow of the bedside lamp. I lay propped on pillows, ribs bound tightly, head throbbing from the concussion, every breath a reminder of how close we had come to losing everything. Vincent sat in the chair between our beds, elbows on his knees, head bowed. The stitches above his eyebrow had crusted dark, his shirt still torn and blood-stained from the crash. He had refused to leave, refused even to change, as though stepping away might allow the world to take us from him again. His broad shoulders, usually so commanding, now carried the weight of betrayal and near loss. Inside him, torment raged without mercy. Marco's treachery, a knife in the back. The crash, a living nightmare. The sight of Tommy's frightened eyes and my blood on the snow, tearing him apart with violent remorse. He had built an empire on loyalty, yet the one man he had trusted most had sold us for power. He lifted his head when he sensed me watching. His eyes, dark, haunted, burning, met mine across the dim space. Love poured from them, no longer restrained, passionate and all-consuming. It had ignited the moment he learned the truth, and now blazed unchecked, fueled by terror of almost losing us. I shifted slightly, wincing. He was at my side in an instant, hand hovering near mine. "Don't move," he whispered, voice rough with exhaustion and emotion. "Tell me what you need." "Just water," I said softly, timid even now. He poured from the pitcher with careful hands, held the straw to my lips. The simple act, once something I had done alone for Tommy in county clinics, felt intimate, overwhelming. I drank, then lay back, dizziness lingering. "Vincent, you're hurt too. You should rest." He shook his head. "I'm fine." But he wasn't. The tremor in his fingers betrayed him. Silence settled, condensed and heavy. Outside, police lights occasionally flashed, officers guarding the floor at Vincent's quiet request. His remaining loyal men patrolled the halls. The rivals had scattered after the crash, but everyone knew they would regroup. Vincent pulled his chair closer, taking my hand fully now. His palm was warm, calloused from a life I only guessed at, enveloping my thin, cold fingers completely. "I keep seeing it," he said, voice barely audible. "The van hitting us. You and Tommy." He stopped, throat working. "If I'd lost you before I even had the chance to—" "You didn't," I whispered. My free hand lifted, trembling, to touch the uninjured side of his face. The stubble was rough beneath my fingertips, his skin fever-warm. Shock rippled through me at my own boldness. The woman who had apologized for existing, now touching this powerful man as though he belonged to her. His eyes closed at the contact, leaning into my palm like a man starving. "Emily," he breathed, my name a prayer and a plea. "I've lived my whole life taking, controlling, never giving anything that mattered. And then you walked back into my world, thin, strong, carrying everything alone, and you've undone me completely." Tears slipped down my temples into my hair. The unfairness rose again. Years of cold nights huddled under one blanket, of choosing between medicine and food, of watching Tommy grow pale while his father lived in penthouses and drove cars that cost more than I had earned in a lifetime. Yet here he was, broken open by love and guilt, offering everything he had. "I was so angry at you," I confessed softly. "For years, for leaving, for the life I thought you chose over us." "I didn't know," he said again, anguish raw. "But that doesn't excuse it. I was the kind of man who took what he wanted and walked away. I became powerful by never looking back, and now looking back is all I do." His forehead rested gently against our joined hands. I felt the dampness of his tears on my skin. The sight of this wealthy, feared man weeping silently tore something deep inside me. Suspicion crumbling, fear giving way to a surge of feeling I could no longer deny. I threaded my fingers through his hair, the strands thick and dark. "You're here now," I whispered. "You saved us." He lifted his head, eyes glistening. "I'll spend the rest of my life making up for the years I wasn't." The distance between us vanished. He leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to turn away. I didn't. Our lips met, soft at first, tentative, then deepening with the force of everything held back. The kiss was fire and forgiveness, desperation and promise. His hand cupped my face tenderly, mindful of bruises. Mine clutched his shirt, pulling him closer despite the pain in my ribs. Years of loneliness, of cold and hunger and silent tears poured into that kiss. His love, passionate, intense, long-burning, met the spark that had flickered in me since the night he took my hand, and together they ignited into flame. When we parted, breath ragged, forehead still touching, the world felt altered. The hospital room, the storm outside, the danger waiting, all of it receded. Only we remained. "I love you," he said against my lips, voice shaking. "I've loved you since the moment I realized what I'd lost, and I love you more with every breath." Tears streamed freely now. "I'm scared," I admitted, "of this, of feeling this much." "I know," he whispered, "but I'm here, and I'm not leaving." Tommy stirred in his sleep, murmuring. We both turned instantly, parental instinct overriding everything. Vincent adjusted the boy's blanket with careful hands, then returned to me, settling on the edge of my bed, my hand still in his. Later, when nurses checked vitals and left us in dimness again, Vincent spoke quietly of plans, moving us far from Chicago, clean money already transferred, new identities prepared. "I'll end this," he vowed. "The threats, the life, everything that touches you." I searched his face. "Can you?" "For you," he said simply, "I can do anything." Outside, a car engine revved in the parking garage, too deliberate. Vincent tensed, listening. His phone vibrated, a text from his security chief. Rivals probing the hospital perimeter, testing defenses. Vincent's jaw set, protective fury rising. He stood, kissing my forehead once more. "Stay with Tommy. Lock the door behind me." Fear surged, but I nodded. "Be careful." He smiled faintly, tender, fierce. "I have everything to come back to now." He left, broad back disappearing through the door. I heard his low voice in the hallway, giving orders, then the elevator ding. Minutes stretched into agony. Tommy slept on. I lay staring at the ceiling, ribs aching, heart pounding with new terror and new hope. The kiss still burned on my lips, Vincent's love a living flame inside me. When he returned 20 minutes later, snow melting in his hair, relief flooded me so powerfully I gasped. He locked the door, returned to my bedside, and took my hand again. "They're gone," he said, "for tonight." He settled back in the chair, but I tugged his hand gently. "Stay closer." Without hesitation, he eased onto the narrow bed beside me, careful of wires and bruises, arm sliding beneath my shoulders. I nestled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, strong, steady, mine now. In the quiet, amid beeping monitors and distant storm, passion settled into deep tenderness. His fingers stroked my hair, mine rested over his heart. Sleep came at last, safe in the arms of the man who had once been a stranger and was now my everything. Outside, danger waited. Inside, love, new, fierce, redemptive, held us through the night. We left the hospital 3 days later under heavy guard, discharged with strict instructions for rest and caution. Tommy's bruises had turned yellow-purple, my ribs still bound and aching with every breath, Vincent moving stiffly from wounds he downplayed. The sleet had stopped, leaving the city blanketed in fresh snow that muffled sound and softened the harsh edges of concrete and steel. Yet the quiet felt deceptive, like the hush before a storm. Vincent drove us himself to the Wisconsin property, a secluded lake house 2 hours north, surrounded by pine forests and frozen water. The house was beautiful in its simplicity. Stone fireplace, wide windows framing white expanse, rooms warmed by radiant heat that seeped into my bones like mercy. Staff had prepared it in advance, groceries stocked, fires lit, beds turned down with flannel sheets that smelled of lavender. Tommy explored wide-eyed, claiming a room overlooking the lake. I stood at the window, watching snow drift from branches, dizziness lingering from pain medication and the surreal speed of change. Vincent watched me constantly, eyes shadowed with exhaustion and resolve. The betrayal had hardened something in him, but love softened everything else. He touched me often now, small brushes of fingers, a hand at my back, tucking hair behind my ear, each contact tender, reverent, as though I might vanish. That first night by the fire, Tommy asleep upstairs, Vincent sat close on the wide leather sofa. Flames danced across his face, highlighting the stitches, the weariness. He took my hand, threading our fingers. "I've made arrangements," he said quietly. "Clean accounts moved offshore, new identities ready, passports, driver's licenses, everything. We can leave the country if you want, or stay hidden here, whatever makes you feel safe." I searched his face. "And you?" He looked into the fire. "I am this first, then I'm done." Fear rose cold. How? He met my gaze, torment raw. "I give them what they think they want. Me." My heart stopped. "No." "It's the only way," he said, voice steady but eyes pleading for understanding. "I stage it, make it look like the rivals finally got me. Car accident, explosion, something convincing. They'll believe it because they want to. Then the empire fractures without me. No one left to fight over. You and Tommy disappear with the money. Safe forever." Tears filled my eyes. "And you?" "I vanished too. New name, new life. With you, if you'll have me." The plan was calculated, ruthless in its sacrifice. The man who had ruled through fear, now willing to erase himself for love. Inside him, conflict tore violently. Remorse for the danger he had brought us, love so fierce it overrode every instinct for self-preservation. I pulled my hand away, standing unsteadily. "You'd give up everything?" "I already have," he said simply. "The moment I held Tommy in that snowbank. The moment I kissed you in that hospital bed. Everything else is just noise." I paced to the window, snow falling thicker now. Memories flooded, cold nights counting change for bus fare, Tommy's cough echoing in our drafty apartment, my mother's thin hand in mine as she faded in that charity bed. The unfairness of my life, poverty that ground hope to dust, contrasted with this man's wealth and power, now offered freely on an altar of redemption. I turned back. "I can't ask you to die for us, even pretend." "You're not asking," he said, rising slowly. "I'm choosing." And he crossed to me, hands framing my face gently. "I've taken my whole life. Now I give." The kiss that followed was different, desperate, consuming, laced with goodbye. His arms wrapped around me carefully, mindful of ribs, but the embrace was fierce, as though memorizing me. Tears mingled with the kiss, salt and sorrow and love too intense to contain. We clung together by the fire until embers glowed low. Later, in the wide bed upstairs, he held me through the night, whispering promises into my hair, mapping my scars with gentle fingers, the physical ones from falls on icy steps, the invisible ones from years of want. The plan unfolded over the next week. Vincent met secretly with loyal men, arranging details. A decoy car, explosives timed remotely, a body double from morgue records, grim necessities of his world. He transferred clean assets, hundreds of millions, into Tommy's trust, irrevocable. New identities waited in a safe: Vincent Witt, Emily Witt, Thomas Witt. A quiet life somewhere warm, perhaps. Each day he grew quieter, torment deepening. Nights he loved me with passionate intensity, as though storing memories against loss. I matched him, fear and love intertwining until I could not tell them apart. The final night arrived too soon. Snow fell heavy again, blanketing the world in white silence. Vincent stood at the window, watching flakes drift. I came up behind him, arms around his waist, cheek against his back. "I'm ready," he said. I could not speak past the lump in my throat. He turned, cupping my face. "One last thing." From his pocket, he drew a simple gold band. "Marry me, tonight, before I go." Tears spilled. "Here?" He nodded. "One of my men is ordained. Quiet, legal, just us and Tommy." Tommy, woken gently, stood sleepy-eyed but solemn, as the loyal man read simple vows by firelight. Vincent's voice shook as he promised to love, protect, cherish. Mine broke on forever. Rings exchanged, plain gold, warm from his hand. Tom hugged us both, sensing the weight but not the full plan. When the man left, Vincent held me close. "Emily Witt," he whispered, tasting the name. "My wife." We loved slowly that night, passionately, tears mingling with kisses, bodies saying what words could not. Dawn approached too swiftly. He left at first light, kissing us both goodbye with fierce tenderness. "I'll be back in 48 hours, he promised. New man, new life. The staged explosion made news by evening. Vincent Moretti's car found burned on a remote road, body charred beyond recognition, dental records conveniently matching the double. Chicago's underworld reeled, rivals claimed victory, then turned on each other for scraps. I watched the reports with Tommy curled against me, heart tearing anew. Grief, even knowing it false, was real. The unfairness of it, of love demanding such sacrifice, threatened to drown me. 48 hours later, a knock sounded at the lake house door. I opened it cautiously. A man stood on the porch, hair dyed lighter, beard grown, eyes the same burning dark. Simple coat, no trace of the tailored suits. But the way he looked at me, love blazing through exhaustion and relief, was unmistakable. "Emily," he said, voice rough with emotion. "It's done." I fell into his arms, sobs breaking free. He held me tightly, murmuring my name, Tommy rushing to join the embrace. Vincent Moretti was dead. Vincent Witt, my husband, was reborn. In the quiet, snowbound house, amid the ashes of an old life, our new one began. Scarred, redeemed, fiercely in love. And in his heart, the ultimate sacrifice had brought the only peace he had ever known, holding the woman and son he had almost lost, safe at last in arms that would never let go. Years slipped by like quiet waves on the lake, each one carrying away a little more of the old shadows and leaving behind something brighter. The lake house in Wisconsin became our true home, its stone walls holding laughter that once seemed impossible. Tommy grew tall and strong, his thin frame filling out with good food and endless outdoor play. Fishing off the dock in summer, hockey on the frozen pond in winter. He attended a small local school where no one knew his past, excelled in mathematics and history, and dreamed of college without ever worrying about cost. My mother's trust, $58 million wisely invested, provided for everything, but it was Vincent's steady presence that gave Tommy the father he had always needed. Vincent Witt, as the world now knew him, changed in ways I could scarcely have imagined that first snowy night. The man who had once commanded fear in Chicago's darkest corners now rose early to chop wood for the fireplace, his powerful hands gentle as he taught Tommy to swing an axe safely. He learned to cook, simple, hearty meals that filled the house with smells of garlic and baking bread. His wealth remained vast, but he used it quietly. Scholarships for children of service workers, anonymous donations to food pantries in Inglewood, repairs for the old building where we had once shivered. The empire was gone, dismantled piece by piece, its clean remnants turned toward good. I changed too. The thin, malnourished woman who had flinched at kindness slowly bloomed. My ribs healed, my cheeks filled, sleep came deep and undisturbed. Yet the memories of poverty never fully left. Cold nights when wind found every crack, choosing between heat and food, the humiliation of food stamp lines. They lived in me like quiet teachers, reminding me never to take warmth for granted. Vincent understood without words. On the coldest evenings, he would wrap me in his arms by the fire and whisper, "You're safe now. We're safe." Our love grew fiercer with time, passionate and intense, a flame that neither years nor hardship could dim. Arguments came, sharp words over small things, but always ended in breathless reconciliation, his hands framing my face, my fingers tangled in his hair. We learned each other's scars, inside and out. Skin color, background, past wealth, or grinding poverty, none of it mattered. Love and compassion bridged every divide, proving stronger than any barrier the world could build. Tommy, now 18, founded the Ruth Harper Foundation the year he started university. Its mission was simple yet profound: support children of waitresses, cleaners, diner cooks, those invisible workers who sacrificed everything for their families. Scholarships, emergency aid, tutoring programs. Vincent matched the first $10 million quietly, then stepped back to let Tommy lead. Together, they traveled to Chicago occasionally, awarding grants in person, meeting families who reminded me so painfully of our old life. Each time, Vincent's eyes would glisten, remorse still lingering for the years he had not known. One autumn evening, as leaves turned gold along the lake, we sat on the wide porch, Tommy home for break, sketching plans for the foundation's next expansion. Vincent's arm rested around my shoulders, my head against his chest. The air smelled of wood smoke and pine. Tommy looked up from his notebook. "I've been thinking about what Grandma Ruth wrote in her letter," he said. "About knowledge being the real inheritance. About how education opens doors money alone can't. I want the foundation to focus even more on that. College funds, trade schools, whatever path a kid chooses." Vincent nodded slowly. "Knowledge is power," he said quietly. "The kind that lasts, the kind no one can take away." I squeezed his hand. "It's the greatest lesson she left us. Education changes everything." Tommy smiled. "And the lesson that love matters more than anything. That's from both of you." We sat in quiet, condensed stillness, watching sunset paint the lake crimson. The journey from a ruined apartment to this peaceful porch had taught us hard, deep knowledge. That wealth without compassion is empty. That poverty with love can still nurture hope. That redemption is possible when someone chooses to give instead of take. Knowledge shaped our days. Education shaped our dreams. Lesson after lesson, we learned to live gently, gratefully, fiercely in love. Vincent turned to me as stars emerged. "I was a man who thought power came from fear," he murmured. "You taught me it comes from protecting what matters. That's the most important knowledge I've ever gained." Tommy raised his glass of cider. To Grandma Ruth, to second chances, to family. We drank, hearts full. Love, we learned, crosses every line, rich or poor, past mistakes or fresh beginnings. It simply asks us to open our hands and hearts. If you followed this story to its end, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I hope it touched you, reminded you that compassion can change lives, that education and knowledge are gifts worth giving, and that love, real, fierce love, knows no boundaries. Please subscribe to the channel Alex Truths, like this video, and share it with someone who might need its message today. There are so many engaging stories waiting, new ones every day. Tell me in the comments, how did this story make you feel? Does it connect to something in your own life? A lesson learned? A moment of unexpected kindness? A time when love overcame hardship? I read every comment and treasure the emotions you share from deep within your hearts. Wishing all of you good health, a joyful life, and daily peace. See you in the next video. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.